If you try to stop me, I come for Mithrandir. I will destroy you.
What does the Dark Lord Sauron fear the most? Throughout the Third Age, the great dictator of Mordor almost did not know what fear was. He despised the most elite armies of men. He laughed at the magic of the wizards. He did not even tremble before the legendary sword Narsil, because all of those things, at most, could only defeat his physical body. However, there is a single being in all of Middle-earth that made this evil lord truly sweat cold. He feared that being, not because that person had the ability to destroy him. He feared because that person is the only entity with the ability to usurp his throne, rule this world with an absolute imposition, exactly like him, but is. Kneeled to and worshipped by all things, and that being who sowed utter terror for Sauron was none other than the most noble, radiant, and pure elf lady that we have ever known, Lady Galadriel of the Golden Wood Lothlorien. Forget the image of the gentle queen, smiling softly, giving Frodo the phial of light in the cinematic films. That is just a brilliant illusion covering a cruel truth. Because, deep beneath the posthumous pages, soaked in philosophical colors, and in his own secret handwritten letter, number 246, J.R.R. Tolkien exposed a hair-raising prospect. If Galadriel nodded to accept the One Ring, she would never become a savior. She would transform into a great, terrible, and extremely cruel queen, a dictator sorceress, replacing the darkness of Sauron with a ruling empire wrapped in velvet. The moment Galadriel stood before the ring in the brightly lit garden was absolutely not a moment of spontaneous weakness. It was the bloody climax of an invisible psychological war that had lasted continuously for 3,000 years. Today, on the Mythos Archive channel, let us tear away the holy wrapper together to step into the darkest abyss in the mind of this powerful elf lady, to witness how cruel and tragically heroic the true price of rejecting supreme power is. To fully understand this great play, and to know why Sauron saw an upgraded version of himself in Galadriel, we must strip off the tranquil image of the Third Age, to turn back time to her most primordial origin. Galadriel is not a faint supporting character who only knows how to stand from afar bestowing blessings. She is the daughter of Prince Finarfin, the granddaughter of King Finwë, the High King of the proud Noldorin elves. She was born in the blessed realm Valinor, bathing in the brilliant light of the two trees in a glorious age before even the sun and the moon were born. The book, The Silmarillion, affirms, Galadriel is the greatest person in the entire history of the Noldor race, standing second only to Fëanor. And that comparison is a measuring tape carrying the weight of 1,000 pounds, because Fëanor was the greatest craftsman, carrying the most fiercely burning flame of passion, but was also the most arrogant and reckless person who ever existed. A genius mind, so dazzling that in the end it burned itself up and dragged half the world down into a sea of blood along with it. Galadriel equaled him in talent and power, but she possessed the thing that Fëanor forever lacked: clairvoyance and the ability to restrain oneself. There is a classic legend that few people know about. Galadriel's hair was likened to a marvel because it imprisoned the light of the brilliant two trees. The great Fëanor had once humbled himself 3 times to beg her to grant a lock of hair to satisfy his thirst for beauty. But Galadriel flatly refused 3 times. Right from those young days, with a deep empathetic ability, she saw through Fëanor's flashy wrapper, touching the arrogant dark part kindling in his soul. She knew how to say no to powers carrying the seeds of manipulation. However, Galadriel is not a saint without desires and demands. She carries within her the proud Noldorin blood, and her aspiration is also as vast as any emperor's. She desired a kingdom of her own, a land where she could freely mold the landscape, where her will is the law, where her great vision of a perfect elven civilization could sprout and bud. In Tolkien's world, the ambition to dominate is not always a crime. It is a measuring tape for the stature of a being. It was that ambition that pushed her into a fateful crossroad, a cruel hidden corner that cinema had completely stripped from her resume. When Fëanor led the Noldorin elves to rebel against the Valar gods, causing the bloody kinslaying at Alqualonde and stealing the swan ships, Galadriel had to suffer the shared doom of Mandos, the eternal exile from the Blessed Realm. Even though she did not dip her hands in the blood of her kin, nor utter the poisonous oath of Fëanor, she chose the way of stepping forward. Moreover, pride forced Galadriel to refuse to board Fëanor's ships. She, along with her brothers, chose the most agonizing path, walking across the Helcaraxë, the grinding ice, an earthly hell made of sharp ice, where darkness and the biting cold cut the skin and cut the flesh, robbing countless lives of the elven race. That suicidal march proved a truth. Galadriel's will is a block of steel that was forged in extreme ice. She always chooses the greater and more difficult path, and when the First Age closed in the fall of the Dark Lord Morgoth, the Valar gods forgivingly opened their arms, issuing a pardon for the exiles. The other elves rushed to set sail back to their homeland. But Galadriel stood silently on the shores of Middle-earth, watching the ships gradually moving away. She refused the pardon of the gods. To return means to kneel. To return means to admit defeat and abandon her still unfinished kingdom. She would rather live her whole life of exile on a dilapidated continent than return to the Blessed Realm in the posture of someone patching up mistakes not entirely caused by herself. Engrave that image deeply. A being carrying divine power, carrying historical injustices, possessing a will harder than ice, and would rather accept eternal damnation than surrender the ambition to create a perfect kingdom. Now, try throwing the One Ring carrying Sauron's immeasurable power into that exact, highly risky psychological equation. When Frodo Baggins held out his tiny hand containing Isildur's Bane in front of the elf lady in the brightly lit garden, the vast majority of naive audiences thought that the boy is handing a dangerous object to a pure queen, someone facing dark magic for the first time. That is a fatal misunderstanding. Galadriel is absolutely not an outsider, bewildered before ringcraft. Throughout the entire Third Age, continuously for 3,000 long years, she is the one who directly wore and manipulated one of the three rings of power of the elves. Nenya, the Ring of Water, the Ring of Adamant. The chronicles record that Galadriel received Nenya from the hands of Celebrimbor, the last great smith of the elven race, and she did not hide it away at all. She used it every day, the giant Malaron tree trunks reaching into the sky, the time-stagnant air current, and the eerie feeling when you step into Caras Galadhon, as if the outside world had stopped spinning and you are standing in an older realm of illusion. All of those things are not natural miracles. All are ringcraft. That is the result of Galadriel continuously pushing the limits of Nenya to hold back the devastation of time, keeping her kingdom from being rotted by the law of life and death. Therefore, the moment the One Ring lay before Galadriel, she understood it from its very roots. She knew clearly the feeling when her will is amplified, when her vision is stretched out endlessly, and when inner desire is given an ultimate weapon to bend reality. Tolkien once wrote very clearly about the horrifying mechanism of ringcraft. The One Ring is Sauron's masterpiece because it was born to chain the necks of all other rings. If Sauron reclaimed it, the minds of those who are wearing the three elven rings would immediately be exposed and enslaved. But Try flipping the chessboard, a logical consequence that few dare to think about. What would happen if the One Ring did not fall into Sauron's hands, but fell into the hands of someone who is wearing the water ring Nenya? That combination would create an explosion of power at a completely different level. A ruler who both understands elven ringcraft and holds the power to summon the darkness, yet possesses vast desires for an ordered civilization. That power is more than enough to be transformed into a brutal empire in ways that the pure destructive thirst of the orcs could never reach. The temptation did not snatch Galadriel right in that garden. The temptation had been smolderingly flowing in her veins for 3,000 years. In every moment, she squeezed out Nenya's power to hold back entropy, hold back the decline, hold back the darkness lurking at the edge of the valley. There was always a voice whispering in her ear. What if you did not just hold back the darkness in this valley, but over the whole world? What if there was a tool to help you do that perfectly, without having to yield or compromise? But Galadriel was too wise to understand that. The ring does not care about good intentions. Tolkien's cosmological rules of the game are very cruel. The ring translates everything into a single same type of grammar: domination. Its core is Sauron's will, and Sauron's will is always imposition from above. If you take the ring with the desire to preserve beauty, you will protect beauty by destroying anyone who dares to think differently from you. If you take it with the desire to shelter your people, you will turn all other peoples into slaves to ensure absolute safety. The purity of the original purpose is completely meaningless. Omnipotent power obligatorily leads to total control, and Galadriel, with her millennial wisdom, saw through to the very end of that soul-swallowing mechanism. It was this terrifying clairvoyance of Galadriel that led us to one of the most excellent, yet most forgotten psychological confrontations in the history of Middle-earth. An invisible encounter explaining why the Dark Lord carries a deep obsession with the Queen of the Golden Wood. Most of us think that Galadriel only recognized Sauron when he had shown his face and declared war in the Third Age. No, she identified him right in the most glorious era of deception, when no one in this world suspected him. Let us turn back the flow of time to the Second Age, at the kingdom of Eregion of the Elven Smiths. Sauron did not appear with the form of an armor-clad demon. He put on a beautiful appearance, calling himself Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, an emissary coming from the Valar gods. With wisdom, honeyed words, and invaluable gifts of knowledge about the art of smithing, Annatar won the hearts of Celebrimbor and almost the entire elven race at Eregion. That is the most classic and successful scam in history. Sauron fed words so that the very greatest smiths of Middle-earth would forge with their own hands the tools that would chain themselves. No one realized who he was until it was too late, except for one person. Galadriel flatly said no. She did not have any physical evidence. She could not call out the name Sauron. But Galadriel had lived through the bloody First Age, a world where the evil of the Dark Lord Morgoth was present everywhere. She had forged a type of spiritual sense of smell so sharp that it could smell the scent of tyranny. Through Annatar's brilliant wrapper and politeness, Galadriel felt a brutally cruel chill. She saw the true shape of a will that was craving to possess and swallow other wills. She fiercely warned Celebrimbor, but those warnings were drowned in the arrogance and thirst for magic of the Smiths. The great Sauron, who was brilliantly successful in deceiving even the most keen eyes of Círdan or Gil-galad, had to shudder when he realized there was a gaze in the corner of the room, silently seeing through his perfect mask. He knew she suspected him. He knew she could not be fooled. The fact that Galadriel called out his exact nature while he was still successfully manipulating the rest of the world was an overwhelming power, existing independently of swords and spears or armies. Clear clairvoyance, in Tolkien's world, is always the most dangerous weapon. But Galadriel's ability to see through all things did not come naturally. It was shaped by a deeper origin, a detail belonging to the deep layer of the legendarium that Sauron understood better than anyone else, and also feared more than anyone else. In her youth in the First Age, Galadriel had spent many years residing in the secluded kingdom of Doriath, becoming the favorite pupil of Melian, the most powerful Maia goddess who ever set foot in Middle-earth. Melian was the wife of King Thingol. With her divine power, she had woven an invisible magical barrier surrounding the entire kingdom, called the Girdle of Melian. This magical wall was not built with stone, but was forged from mist and illusionary spells, so strong that it halted and bent the minds of any monster army that dared to venture near. It even refused the footsteps of the Dark Lord Morgoth himself. That is the greatest testament to the fact that a resolute will, if combined with preservation magic, can bend the laws of nature and create an inviolable space. Galadriel intently observed that miracle. She learned from the greatest Maia how to become a preserver, how to use power to maintain an oasis of beauty amidst a rotting world, where time is frozen and all pressure from the outside is bounced back. Thousands of years later, when Doriath fell and Melian left the world, Galadriel brought that mass of knowledge legacy with her. By combining what was learned from Melian with the power of the water ring Nenya, she recreated a second Doriath at the Golden Wood Lothlorien. And this is exactly what made Sauron sweat cold. Sauron used to be Morgoth's most trusted lieutenant in the First Age. He was all too familiar with Melian's power. He knew clearly how terrifying the preservation magic of the Girdle of Doriath was. Therefore, when Sauron in the Third Age looked up towards Lothlorien, he did not just see a normal elven kingdom. He was facing the legacy of an old nightmare. He faced an elf woman, carrying within her the sharp, perceptive quality of Melian, using the unbreakable defensive tactic of Melian, combined with the power of a ring of power. Sauron's darkness could not penetrate the Golden Wood Lothlorien, not because there was a mighty army there. The darkness was halted because at its center there was a single will squeezing out its strength, interweaving magic into every tree branch, blade of grass, every gust of wind, to erect an absolute barrier. Sauron's eye could not see through it. His dark magic could not touch it. The will of that queen had never relaxed, never fallen asleep, never been distracted throughout 3,000 long years. That is not a loud, violent power. That is the power of endurance, the power of commitment, the power of the refusal to step back. And a person using violence like Sauron is completely powerless in breaking a preservation will as solid as bedrock from the outside. However, the absolute defense of Lothlorien is only half of the truth. The thing that truly made the Dark Lord tremble when directing his fiery eye towards the Golden Wood did not lie in what Galadriel was doing to fight against him. Sauron's utter terror lay in the fact what Galadriel could do if she decided to become him. We must name this fear in the most accurate way, because it was never a simple military problem. Sauron had once feared many things throughout the Third Age. He feared the sword Narsil being reforged, feared the return of the king, because the Dunedain lineage represented a legitimate kingship that he could not use vile tricks and dirty schemes to manipulate. He feared the ring being destroyed, because his life had been bound to it forever. But all those fears bore a strategic nature, a calculation about what the enemy could do and the way to counterattack. With Galadriel alone, that was a completely different type of obsession. She was the only being in all of Middle-earth, according to Tolkien's own affirmation, capable enough to replace him, not to defeat, not to resist, but to replace. That was not a glorious prospect where an alliance of heroes collapsed the Dark Tower to restore peace. That was a cruel succession of power. This dictatorial will took the place of another dictatorial will. This ruling order crushed another ruling order. The One Ring is not an inanimate weapon. It is a machine, a giant translation set programmed to bend every individual will into absolute domination. The ring's mechanism is always Sauron's grammar, Sauron's vocabulary. Regardless of what desire you stuff into that machine, whether it is love, preservation, or the wish to protect beauty, when extracted out, it always carries a single meaning: dictatorship. The thing Sauron feared most in Galadriel was not that she would destroy him, but that she would complete him. She would snatch the machine that he had crafted and use it to dominate the world with a holy mask. This was Sauron's life and death gamble throughout the Third Age. His entire strategy relied on a single arrogance. He was confident that he was the only being in Middle-earth possessing a will large enough to wear the One Ring without being burned by it or manipulated in return. He was the original master, the only one speaking the same language as the ring. But Galadriel was the second person to understand that language. She was the only person possessing the perfect combination of the innate power of the Noldor bloodline, the mastery of ringcraft, and a self-aware discipline forged over thousands of years. If she wore the ring, she would not be swallowed by it immediately. She would have enough time, more than enough time, to crush Sauron and reshape the entire world according to a new order before the corruption of the ring completely controlled her soul. And that order is not Sauron's order. If Galadriel seized the ring, Sauron's chessboard ended, not because he had been defeated by the light, but because someone else had won, using his very own tool. He did not fear death. He feared the most perfect masterpiece of his life, turning to serve someone else. That is the ultimate fear of a dark artisan, being deposed by the very greatness of the work he created. Understanding the root of that truth, we just see how cruel a weight the moment in the garden at Caras Galadon carries. When refusing Frodo's offer, Galadriel said, "I passed the test. I will diminish, go into the west, and remain Galadriel." Those words are often misunderstood as a song of triumph. People only focus on the first clause, the fact that she rejected temptation. But the second clause is what carries the blood price to be paid. I will diminish. That is not a preservation. That is a tearful sacrifice. She was choosing the way of abandoning all the power of the ring Nenya. She accepted standing and watching the kingdom of Lothlorien, the thing that she had squeezed out her heart's blood for 3,000 years to keep, fade and wither, dissolving into mundane forests. In the Elven legendarium, the fading is a cruel destiny when the strong souls of the elves gradually burn up their physical shells in the material world. The 3 elven rings were originally forged as a desperate rebellion against that law of fading, an effort aimed at freezing time. By letting go of the One Ring and accepting to let the ring Nenya lose its power, Galadriel had single-handedly smashed the last proud illusion of the Noldor race. She chose to step onto the ship crossing the deep sea, to return to a place that throughout the youth of her life she had resolutely rejected. And she returned, not in the posture of a victorious queen, but as a version that had been stripped of the most dazzling halo, because the magical power maintaining that golden age had shattered. All that was left was an ancient Noldor woman, coming to Middle-earth with sky-high ambitions, and leaving only with quiet wisdom. The return to Valinor, in fact, was not exactly a reward. It was a completion of destiny. Her proud Noldor bloodline had once preferred to be exiled rather than submit, but now she voluntarily let go of everything: ambition, the ring, the kingdom, and even the savior role that she could have entirely grasped. That stepping back is not a failure. That is the greatest choice of a being who had stood precariously on the edge of the abyss for 3 millennia. Middle-earth is a grave, burying countless, those crushed by power that they could not resist. The Dark Lord Morgoth craved the flame imperishable, only to turn himself into an empty abyss. Sauron refined deception until he was backfired by that very deception. Saruman arrogantly wanted to surpass Sauron, but ultimately only became a pathetic copy. 9 human lords chose immortality only to become lingering Nazgul ghosts with no salvation. All of them had jumped into the abyss. Only Galadriel alone stood at that edge longer than anyone, possessed greater capacity than anyone, had more legitimate reasons than anyone to believe she would use that power to do good. But in the end, she chose to step back. History always praises heroes swinging swords to slaughter. The story is named after the hobbits bearing the ring, the kings reclaiming the throne, the wizards driving back the darkness. But hidden beneath that flashy wrapper are the people who silently created a premise for that entire story to be able to happen. Being the one who said no, at the moment that the world could completely be permanently changed by their word, yes. The greatest resistance does not lie in you using power to destroy a demon. The greatest resistance is when you hold in your hands absolute power to become a demon bearing a holy face, but you chose to abandon it and learned to live with your own loss. Ask yourself again, once more, not from the perspective of a strategic chess move, but the cruel truth about the nature of power. Did Sauron fear Galadriel because she had the ability to destroy him, or because she was the only being with the ability to replace him in the most perfect way? The deepest fear never comes from being destroyed. The ultimate fear is being replaced by a dark, terrible, and tyrannical version of oneself, but is worshipped by humanity under the wrapper of love and beauty. These haunting questions, Tolkien intentionally embedded into the architecture of Middle-earth, not to find a neatly resolving answer. True masterpieces never end with the exhaustive exposure of every secret. They end with echoes tearing at the mind. So from your perspective, is the price of letting go that Galadriel had to pay an admirable tragedy, or a weakness before the ultimate temptation of power? Carve your sharp reflections under the comments section so we can dissect them together. Thank you for stepping into the darkest corners of Middle-earth with me. If you love this content, do not forget to support the channel so we have more motivation to make deeper videos. Hello, and see you again in the next episodes on the Mythos Archive.